Chapter 3 of The Lancashire Witches. This recording is in the public domain. Reading by Andy Minter. The Lancashire Witches, a Romance of Pendle Forest, by William Harrison Ainsworth. Introduction. The Last Abbot of Whalley. Chapter 3 Whalley Abbey. A sad, sad change hath come over the fair Abbey of Whalley. It knoweth its old masters no longer. For upwards of 2 centuries and a half hath the blessed place grown in beauty and riches. 17 abbots have exercised unbounded hospitality within it, but now they are all gone, save one, and he is attainted of felony and treason. The grave monk walketh no more in the cloisters, nor seeketh his pallet in the dormitory. Vesper or matin song resound not, as of old, within the fine conventual church. Stripped are the altars of their silver crosses, and the shrines of their votive offerings and saintly relics. Pyx and chalice, thurible and vial, golden-headed pastoral staff, and mitre embossed with pearls, candlestick and Christmas ship of silver, salver, basin, and ewer, all are gone. The splendid sacristy hath been despoiled. A sad, sad change hath come over Whalley Abbey. The libraries, well stocked with reverend tomes, have been pillaged, and their contents cast to the flames; and thus long laboured manuscript, the fruit of years of patient industry, with gloriously illuminated missal, are irrecoverably lost. The large infirmary no longer receiveth the sick. In the locutory sitteth no more the guest. No longer in the mighty kitchens are prepared the prodigious supply of meats, destined for the support of the poor, or the entertainment of the traveller. No kindly porter stands at the gate to bid the stranger enter and partake of the munificent abbot's hospitality, but a churlish guard bids him hie away, and menaces him, if he tarries, with his halbert. Closed are the buttery hatches and the pantries, and the daily dole of bread hath ceased. Closed also to the brethren is the refectory. The cellarer's office is ended. The strong ale, which he brewed in October, is tapped in March by roystering troopers. The rich muscadel and malmsey, and the wines of Gascoigne and the Rhine, are no longer quaffed by the abbot and his more honoured guests, but drunk to his destruction by his foes. The great gallery, 150 feet in length, the pride of the abbot's lodging, and a model of architecture, is filled, not with white-robed ecclesiastics, but with an armed earl and his retainers. Neglected is the little oratory dedicated to Our Lady of Whalley, where night and morn the abbot used to pray. All the old religious and hospitable uses of the abbey are forgone. The reverend stillness of the cloisters, scarce broken by the quiet tread of the monks, is now disturbed by armed heel and clank of sword, while in its saintly courts are heard the ribald song, the profane jest, and the angry brawl. Of the brethren, only those tenanting the cemetery are left. All else are gone, driven forth as vagabonds, with stripes and curses, to seek refuge where they may. A sad, sad change has come over Whalley Abbey. In the plenitude of its pride and power has it been cast down, desecrated, despoiled. Its treasures are carried off, its ornaments sold, its granaries emptied, its possessions wasted, its storehouses sacked, its cattle slaughtered and sold. But though stripped of its wealth and splendour, though deprived of all the religious graces that, like rich incense, lent an odour to the fane, its external beauty is yet unimpaired, and its vast proportions undiminished. A stately pile was Whalley, one of the loveliest, as well as the largest, in the realm. Carefully had it been preserved by its reverend rulers, and where reparations or additions were needed, they were judiciously made. Thus age had lent it beauty, by mellowing its freshness and toning its hues, while no decay was perceptible. Without a struggle had it yielded to the captor, so that no part of its wide belt of walls or towers, though so strongly constructed as to have offered effectual resistance, were injured. Never had Whalley Abbey looked more beautiful than on a bright clear morning in March, when this sad change had been wrought, and when, from a peaceful monastic establishment, it had been converted into a menacing fortress. The sunlight sparkled upon its grey walls, and filled its three great quadrangular courts with light and life, piercing the exquisite carving of its cloisters, and revealing all the intricate beauty and combinations of the arches. Stains of painted glass fell upon the floor of the magnificent conventual church, and dyed with rainbow hues the marble tombs of the Lacies, the founders of the establishment, brought thither when the monastery was removed from Stanlaw in Cheshire, and upon the brass covered gravestones of the abbots in the presbytery. There lay Gregory de Northbury, 8th abbot of Stanlaw and 1st of Whalley, and William Rede, the last abbot, but there was never to lie John Paslew. The slumber of the ancient prelates was soon to be disturbed, and the sacred structure within which they had so often worshipped upreared by sacrilegious hands. But all was bright and beauteous now, and if no solemn strains were heard in the holy pile, its stillness was scarcely less reverential and awe-inspiring. The old abbey wreathed itself in all its attractions, as if to welcome back its former ruler, whereas it was only to receive him as a captive doomed to a felon's death. But this was outward show. Within, all was terrible preparation. Such was the discontented state of the country, that, fearing some new revolt, the Earl of Derby had taken measures for the defence of the abbey, and along the wide circling walls of the close were placed ordnance and men, and within the grange stores of ammunition. A strong guard was set at each of the gates, and the courts were filled with troops. The bray of the trumpet echoed within the close, where rounds were set for the archers, and martial music resounded within the area of the cloisters. Over the great north eastern gateway, which formed the chief entrance to the abbot's lodging, floated the royal banner. Despite these warlike proceedings, the fair abbey smiled beneath the sun, in all, or more than all, its pristine beauty, its green hills sloping gently down towards it, and the clear and sparkling Calder dashing merrily over the stones at its base. But upon the bridge, and by the river side, and within the little village, many persons were assembled, conversing gravely and anxiously together, and looking out towards the hills, where other groups were gathered, as if in expectation of some afflicting event. Most of these were herdsmen and farming men, but some among them were poor monks in the white habits of the Cistercian brotherhood, but which were now stained and threadbare, while their countenances bore traces of severest privation and suffering. All the herdsmen and farmers had been retainers of the abbot. The poor monks looked wistfully at their former habitation, but replied not, except by a gentle bowing of the head, to the cruel scoffs and taunts with which they were greeted by the passing soldiers. But the sturdy rustics did not bear these outrages so tamely, and more than one brawl ensued, in which blood flowed, while the ruffianly arquebussier would have been drowned in the Calder, but for the exertions to save him of a monk whom he had attacked. This took place on the 11th of March, 1537, more than 3 months after the date of the watching by the beacon before recorded. And the event, anticipated by the concourse without the abbey, as well as by those within its walls, was the arrival of Abbot Paslew and Fathers Eastgate and Haydock, who were to be brought on that day from Lancaster, and executed on the following morning before the abbey, according to sentence passed upon them. The gloomiest object in the picture remains to be described, but yet it is necessary to its completion. This was a gallows of unusual form and height, erected on the summit of a gentle hill, rising immediately in front of the abbot's lodgings, called the Holehouses, whose rounded, bosomy beauty it completely destroyed. This terrible apparatus of condign punishment was regarded with abhorrence by the rustics, and it required a strong guard to be kept constantly round it to preserve it from demolition. Amongst a group of rustics collected on the road leading to the north east gateway was Cuthbert Ashbead, who, having been deprived of his forester's office, was now habited in a frieze doublet and hose, with a short camlet cloak on his shoulder, and a fox-skin cap, embellished with the grinning jaws of the beast, on his head. Eh,